Hey guys, welcome back to Stove Talk with Matt. Already made a video about what was in this book, Fireplaces and Wood Stoves, an old book from 1980, a Time Life book I found in the Goodwill. And most of this book is dated, but there's some interesting things. And I have tabs on the few things I want to show you. Just one more video on this book. I'll show you quickly now what I'm going to cover here, so you could see if this is of interest to you. And then I'll probably use still shots and come back and talk in detail about this. So just real quick to see if this is of interest to you, I'm going to talk about the basic stove design of the last 50 years is to have a baffle that drives all of the gases, fire, and smoke forward before it's allowed to pass out of the chimney. Won't spend too much time on that. I just want to make a few points on that. This is interesting. This page 23, let's go to the next page. Insulating a stovepipe by pouring a mixture of a cement mixture and a perlite mixture between the masonry and the stovepipe. There's some real advantages to doing that. Very few people do it. Very few people have to do it, but here I'll show you what they recommend the mix to be, and certain type of perlite that's treated, so I believe it doesn't absorb water. So we'll look at that. Okay, I want to just talk about this diagram where they run the pipe in the house, but then just at about 6 or 7 or 8 feet it goes outside the house and up. Just some things I want to note if anybody has to rig up this sort of a system. That you have to be careful about a few things because this pipe on a 0-degree day will get very cold very quickly, and it can backdraft, and some things I want to talk about there. I want to talk about how terrible a fireplace design is in 95% of North American homes. A basic fireplace design like this is absolutely horrible. Wanted to talk about that using that diagram here. And this talks about, it looks like a venting system, I believe it's going to use fans to circulate heat, air around the back of a regular fireplace. So a regular fireplace actually produces some heat, where of course in most fireplaces in most homes it just steals heat. It doesn't, if you sit right in front of it you can get warm, but overall it steals heat from your house, it steals energy. And it is amazing to me how just a few simple design elements like this to a regular fireplace can actually make it, I don't know what you want to say, heat positive. Where if you lose 8 parts of heat, you gain 10. So you're netting 2. But again, most homes don't have anything like this. It's such a waste, and I want to talk about that. What else is in here? Flashing. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess, mortar for a chimney. That's probably why I marked this. Where mortar, your joints for a chimney needs to be a mortar that is. It has to be not as hard as or softer than the masonry you're using, so the chimney can breathe or the masonry can breathe. And then I want to talk about, it's a guide to different types of hardwoods and the BTUs here. We'll look at this. Medium, high BTUs and low BTUs, softwoods here. Softwoods can be burned. And people say, oh, stay away from pine, and I'm going to talk about softwoods, even pine and evergreen can be burned if you do it the right way. Okay, back to the first segment, just about 2 minutes here. I just wanted to mention a few things. I mean, this stove design, an iron wood stove, cast iron with the baffle, this is the basic design for 95% of stoves built from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, through 2010. And they're doing some different things today. They have to use catalysts and some, to get the EPA standards. But this is basically what's been going on for 50 years. But what's funny is, I wanted to mention, people think, and they make these YouTube videos, they think there's something wrong with their stove, or they think there's something wrong with the draft of their stove or their pipe, because they say, I can't open the door when it's burning. Well, you're not supposed to in a stove like this. That baffle, everything is driven forward towards, all the heat and smoke and gases are driven forward towards the door, towards the glass door or iron door, depending on how old it is. You can't open it up when it's fully burning, it'll smoke your house out. You're only supposed to open it up, supposed to get it lit properly, and then keep it closed until you have just coals. So there's nothing wrong with the stove. Although any stove, of course, that has a baffle that goes up much higher than the door, you're going to be able to open that door more. Many stoves are like this with the baffle just a few inches above the top of the door. And if that's, it is not, you need these baffles so these iron stoves get hot. If you remove the baffle, or it'll just go right out the pipe, and parts of your stove up top will be just lukewarm. It really means a huge difference in getting the whole iron stove hot. But you can't open the door, and there's nothing wrong with the stove. If you're looking at one of these again, and if you like to add wood when it's still burning, make sure that baffle is up high, or it can be cut back. Maybe it's some sort of ceramic material. You could cut it back a bit, although you're going to lose some efficiency. I had a wood stove where it's a huge heavy iron baffle right up to the door, and you just simply you can't do anything about it. It's great. It produces heat, but you can't open that door one bit when it's burning, and that's normal. Okay, the second segment, I'll probably spend more time here. This will be 5, 6, or 7 minutes, this segment. Insulating between a stovepipe and the brick masonry. Now, the language in the book, they make it seem like everybody does this and everybody should do it. And most people don't have to do this. Most times, especially if the masonry chimney is running through the center of the house, that area between the stovepipe and the masonry will stay warm because it's not a chimney that's outside the house or on an outside wall that gets ice cold because the whipping winds at 0 degrees. If it goes through the house, it's going to stay pretty warm. It's always nice if you have any sort of a draft problem and you insulate around the pipe between the area between the bricks and the stovepipe, it will draft like crazy. I mean, but most people don't need to do this. Anyway, if you do it, what they recommend in the book is 3 parts sand to 1 part Portland cement. Now, then they say to that, once you mix that up, then it's 5 to 1 perlite to that. So I don't know, that's just the way they present it. It's 3 sand to 1 Portland cement. And then once you mix that up, you add 5 parts perlite to 1 part of that. So we're gonna have to talk that through for a few minutes because that might be confusing to a few people. Number one, if you can use type S or type N cement. Portland is super hard. There's no lime in it, so it's probably not much difference. You could use type S cement at Home Depot or that has some lime in it. It's a little softer. 3 to 1, and then 5 to 1 perlite. Now they say use silicone treated perlite. Now the reason, they don't say why they're recommending that, but I know why they're recommending that because I don't know where you would even get that. They're saying it's available, but whatever, at masonry stores, I don't know how you could even get that. Perlite's easy to come by at any gardening shop, but perlite absorbs a little bit of water, and that's why if you get it treated so it does not absorb water. They don't say that's what it's for, but that's got to be what it's for, because people have they've insulated a chimney with vermiculite to sand and Portland cement or type S or type N, and the vermiculite holds huge amounts of water. So the chimney, if rain were to get in, or even humidity over time, but especially if rain gets in, the chimney all of a sudden is 300 pounds heavier. And there's actually cases, I don't know where, I just read about this recently or saw a video about this, where the chimney can fall over because the vermiculite, the insulating materials, absorb so much water and humidity over the years. So if you silicone treated perlite, I believe it doesn't hold any water. Perlite holds less water than vermiculite. I've soaked a bunch of perlite in water. It seems to soak up about, I don't know, a third of the water. It doesn't seem to get fully saturated like a sponge. Anyway, also, if you do this because you need draft, and again, most people aren't going to need to do this. It's really just about increasing draft and also There is, with a chimney that stays warm or a pipe that stays warm, there's never a chance of backdraft. But most people are not going to need to do this. But if you do, remember, if you put too much cement in, it's there. It's a permanent structure. I mean, it's not. You're never going to get it out. I think the idea of what the 5-to-1 perlite, it would be just hard enough to hold everything, be held together, but it's going to be, you could chip it out, and they call it a slurry mix. I don't know. You probably, if you wanted to be able to remove it easily, you'd probably do 10-to-1 cement or type S to perlite, so it wouldn't have much strength. It would be, does it need any strength? If it doesn't need any strength, it's just an insulating material. But it depends how good of a quality your pipe is. If the top 15 feet of your pipe is some galvanized dryer vent piece of crap pipe, it could be eaten away over time. And then if you use a good cement and perlite mix, that chimney will still be there, even if the metal starts getting holes. So anyway, guys, I don't want to get too much detail on this. This would be much more necessary to me on a chimney that's on outside the house or on an outside wall to keep that stovepipe insulated and warm, where the bricks are, the winds of 0 degrees are whipping against the bricks. This chimney's through the center of the house. Only a small portion above the roof is exposed, and just by being in the house, it's going to stay pretty warm. Of course, if you knew it wasn't going to get wet, you could stuff a non-combustible insulation like a mineral wool down there. And again, if you did your top right and you just knew with your flashing whatever it was never going to get wet in there, you could try to insulate it the best you can by stuffing in mineral wool. And honestly, guys, I mean, I don't know how fire resistant regular insulation is, but I mean, the top 10 feet of this pipe, especially above the roof, is not going to be super hot. But I got to tell you to use mineral wool, a non-combustible material. And if you use insulation, it cannot get wet at all. All right, this is the next page I wanted to talk about, which is kind of related to the last section, insulating a chimney. But with these kits, where you want to go up 3-4 feet or as high as you can in the house, straight up, to create some draft momentum before you go horizontal and then up again. That horizontal 2-3 feet or whatever is really not a big deal going straight over if you create momentum going up for 3 or 4 feet. Of course, you want to limit horizontals as much as possible, but if you create draft momentum going up, it's not like, well, put in 5 degrees. That it doesn't matter. It doesn't. If you create 4 feet of draft going up, it can be completely horizontal, level for 3 feet before it leaves the house. Trying to put in 5 degrees or 8 degrees, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. But this is when you can create that draft speed going up. When it comes, if it's coming directly out the back of the stove, out the wall, and your horizontal is right off the bat, that you have to be much more careful with. Here, 4 feet vertical run creates a lot of speed. Then it goes zigzags right, level, no big deal. But the key about this is, I'm sure they're talking about an insulated double wall stovepipe, but it doesn't matter. It's a regular double wall stovepipe on the outside of a house, where it could be -5 degrees on an outside wall. You got to be real careful with this setup for a few reasons. One is when you go to light it, I mean, you have to prime it. Be very careful until you know your stove and your setup. It can backdraft on you. It can reverse draft on you big time. Where the outside pipe on, again, even double wall. So what? It's not that insulated. We'll talk about maybe later if you really wanted to insulate this. There's what you would do. You go to light the stove. I've done this. I've had all this stuff happen, and it starts flowing. The air starts flowing down into this, and the stove just starts pushing out smoke into the house. It's a reverse flow. Of course, to help that, negative pressures to positive pressures, you always want to have, until you know your stove setup, you want to have a window, cracked 3 or 4 inches, or a sliding glass door open a bit. That'll help a bit. But when that pipe on the outside is 0 degrees, the air is like a heavy weight. It will not draft. You have to once you get to know your system, you might have to prime this. You might have to put candles in the stove for 15 minutes. Some people have used hair dryers, whatever it may be. Now, depending on the stove, how if it go straight up the top, so you're gaining at least initially some vertical momentum. Some people will the pipe on the outside could be negative 15 degrees, and they say I've never had a problem, and it just lights right up and drafts incredibly good right from the very start. Well, everybody's setup is different. The pressure of the house is different. Just saying, if you have to be real careful for the first month or so till you really know your system. If you have an ice, and it can be just fine when it's 25 Fahrenheit outside. Then you go to light it, and it's negative 4 degrees. You go to light it, and you'll have a reverse draft because that pipe on the outside is so cold, and it's so heavy, the air inside. So I would say, again, until you know your system for months and months or a whole season, always err on whatever you have to do. You start slow, put candles in, then just light a piece of newspaper. Make sure it's going up very aggressively before you stack up your kindling and your sticks and you go to light it. I know it will reverse draft and it will smoke out it's no fun to have to open all the windows in January. I have. Well, it was probably December. It wasn't so cold outside. But then I learned I have to really slowly prime it. Now, it won't start drafting until that outer chimney gets hot. And if you really wanted to insulate this, again, you would whatever this is, even if it's double wall stovepipe, some people their jury rig setup, they'll just use single wall pipe. But you can make insulated chimney. It's just a pipe. You go out to Home Depot, Lowe's, or a home center, you get dryer vent, galvanized dryer vent, and you put the 10-inch or 8, depending on how much insulation you have, or you put the 10-inch or the 8-inch pipe around your 6-inch stovepipe, and you stuff it's a big project, but you stuff the gap in between with mineral wool or non-flammables or perlite or vermiculite, or you stuff it in between. And of course, then you need to cut out with snips. You need to make caps so it doesn't get wet in there, and 100 extra pounds. It'll just will pull the chimney right off the wall. You can with a pipe, a cheap galvanized pipe, over top of a stovepipe. You can insulate this stuff yourself, and when it's insulated, it gets within 30 seconds it gets hot, and just boom, the draft starts so much more quickly than if you're doing this sort of setup yourself. Either way, try to get as much of that vertical straight up run as you can before you go out. That will really, really help. If you have to go out right away and then up, you get very, very careful. Okay, the next picture, just maybe 4 minutes here. I'm just going to complain about how horrible North American, US, and Canadian Fireplace. I don't know what they have in Europe. Maybe it's the same, but this is a horrible design. This is the design in 95% of North American homes. And I think the design was given to everybody by Exxon. So you just waste your energy and you use more oil. I don't know. But it's not just me saying this. I mean, Count Rumford, the Rumford fireplace in the 1700s came up with a system that's 3 times better than this. And then that was just all forgotten about. And they went to this horrible system. So at least this one has outside air coming in. Most people don't even have that. So the fireplace just steals the heat from your home. At least this one has an outside air inlet. But the thing that really bugs me is that if you go up just 4 or 5 rows of bricks, and then the back of the fireplace slants in towards the living room. Here the slant isn't that aggressive. You've seen it where it really slants in. It's just pushing the smoke and everything towards you get a little more heat that way, but if you have any sort of draft problem, it's a disaster. So the Rumford fireplace is just a flat back. Everything just goes right up a flat back. It drafts really, really well and really aggressively. Now someone's saying, well, the reason it points in addition to giving a tiny little bit of heat, if you're sitting right in front of the fireplace, overall it'll steal heat from your house. It creates a smoke shelf. It's even listed there. It's a little blurry because I screenshot it, guys. Smoke shelf. Well, if you make the chimney or the chimney of the right size and not too big, you don't need a smoke shelf. Most of these chimneys in U.S. homes, in North American homes, they're way too big. They're like 3 feet wide and 2 or 3 feet deep. This big box. Well, yeah, the gases and hot gases get up, but then there's so much space and these big wide chimneys that cold air can rush down. If you just make the chimney the right size, much, much smaller than the way they've been making them for, I don't know, 150 years. I mean, who knows how long. You just make the chimney much smaller, or the equivalent chimney of like an 8-inch or a 10-inch stovepipe. If that's the chimney, whether you use the stovepipe or it's a smaller bricked-in chimney, there's no opportunity for cold air to rush down because all the hot gases are occupying all the space rushing up. It's a total crap design, and I guess I'm done complaining about it. Anyway, I remember the other video I made about this book was that front lintel, lowering that lintel. If anybody needs to lower the lintel, so people have sometimes a draft problem where they get a little smoke into the living room when the fire starts to go cold. Because sometimes the chimney's on the outside of the house. The bricks go cold because it's 0 degrees outside. The chimney's not through the center of the house, it's outside the house. The bricks go cold and the draft dies. So smoke starts to pour over the lintel into the room a bit. And you just would lower, we talked about a few videos back from this book, you lower the lintel. But you wouldn't have to lower the lintel if the back of the chimney was just a flat back like a Rumford, and it didn't push everything forward, create some sort of turbulence, go round and round turbulence that pushes some of the smoke out into your living room. That's not very fun at Thanksgiving with Grandma and Grandpa, is it? Anyway, sorry, I'm done complaining about this. I think Exxon made the building codes. Okay, next section. I would estimate that only 1% of fireplaces, or far less, actually attempt to get some heat out of the fireplace like this baffle system does. The fireplace is on the left. It looks like a regular fireplace, but behind the fire brick, there's a baffle system that pushes air around with fans. So the air pushed around behind the fire brick, it never touches the smoke, it never touches the flame. It's just pushing air along the very hot fire brick to try to draw some heat out of the firebox. What a novel idea to actually try to get heat out of a fireplace. My goodness. I guess Exxon didn't get to everybody's design. Not even 1% have it. Every single fireplace should do this because you could do it very easily at the time it's all being built. So anyway, the fans are up high. You see those on the left, fireplace on the left, the vents at the top and at the bottom. It takes in air high at the top. Then you go to the cutaway on the right. It blows the air down the bricks. There's 2 separate fans, one on each side, at least in this design. There's a divider wall. So it blows the air down, and it travels in a, something like, 6-inch high by 6-inch wide box of brick. And then per the baffle system, the air is wound up and down, then down. There's a center dividing wall between the 2 fan systems on each side. And then again, up over 3 bricks, down under 3 bricks, up over, and then out the bottom, hot air rises, then it'll rise up. It kind of pushes the fan. Because you have a fan, you could kind of push, there's going to be a lot of extra strength to push against the flow of hot air wanting to rise. And this won't do a great job heating the house. I mean, it's very minimal. The fans, are not that powerful. They're just duct fans, like air conditioning duct fans some people have in the house to try to get the air conditioning a little better to certain places. It's only going to cost, it's going to cost 50 cents to run the fans per day. And in terms of getting the heat out of this thing, it'll probably, make that living room kind of nice, but it won't even get close to heating the whole floor or heating the house, not even close. If you're getting 10 out of 10 heat out, you're losing 8 out of 10 heat up the chimney just by having the fireplace. So, I guess a little living room will get kind of warm. It kind of helps out. Just, 10 feet away, 15 feet away from the fire. I'd say it wouldn't raise the temperature of the room by more than 5 or 7 degrees. Hey, not bad. Better than what every other fireplace does. And if anybody was ever going to try to build something like this or consider something like this, you wouldn't have to build that exact design. You could do anything that pushes air in some sort of a gap on the other side of the hot fire bricks. You could have a big metal, 5 inches, a big metal surround in the back. You could any sort of system with a fan that could push air along as many of those hot fire bricks as possible. You'd get something out of it. I mean, this is a pretty good design because the idea is to keep that air. You don't want those fans to blast the air at 20 miles an hour. You want the fans just to move the air at maybe 3 or 4 or 5 miles an hour, very, very slowly. So they touch the bricks, heat up, and they wind up and down, wind up and down. Maybe it amounts to 5 meters. You get an extra, 10 degrees coming out the bottom than what in the top. Maybe you get an extra 5 or 6 degrees. I don't think it would be that significant, but it would be enough just for one room. But if you were doing this yourself, you could rig up anything that's non-flammable behind the fire brick and wind the air around with sheet metal, whatever it may be, and to have it spit out the other side, kind of warmed up. This baffle system it does make sense. And the bricks themselves in the baffle system will eventually get warm and help that air, where a sheet metal system, wouldn't warm up and hold heat in and of itself. So a brick system is better, but to do this around back, you need an additional 200 bricks. So anyway, that's that. Okay, guys, there's 2 segments left. The last segment is on the different types of wood to burn and just a little discussion about burning real softwood like pine or evergreens. And I want to just tell you what I believe regarding that. They say not to do it because of creosote, but I think it can be done. I'm not an expert here. I'm not a brick layer or anything like that. But I just wanted to point a few things out, guys. First off, if you have a cracked chimney and you need to fix it yourself, and what do they want, like $8,000? I mean, these $8,000 to $10,000 for these jobs. You can do it yourself, really. I mean, if it's really in bad shape and you can sledgehammer the bricks, if you go down far enough, it's going to probably at some point be sitting on, a real old home, the brick will go all the way down, but at some point it's probably sitting on cinder block. So, or if you go down to the roof layer, the bricks might really be in good shape. It's only cracked, up top. So you just go down to where it's secure and stable. And when you redo your bricks, and when you butter them, the key is what I wanted to mention is, and I'm no expert at this, I've just heard this enough, and many of you know this, but you use for the joints, the mortar joints, you use a mix that's a good degree softer than your masonry or your stone or whatever you're using as the core of your chimney. That way it breathes, it's not going to trap water and then crack everything. So, and I know the old restoration on the homes in Europe, the 300-400-year-old homes, they use lime putty, like the real lime, or they call it hydraulic lime. But what they use to restore the old castles where money's no object, they use lime putty. It takes 2 to 3 or 4 weeks to set up properly because it all sets up naturally with the carbon dioxide in the air. Then it breathes and it doesn't crack the stone or it doesn't. So anyway, guys, I'm no expert at this, but I would just recommend at your type S has more cement, less lime than type N. You don't want to if you use only Portland cement, which is just a hardcore cement, it's hard as a rock. The chimney will be great probably for 6, 7, 8 years, but it's so hard everything will start cracking apart. If you live in Wisconsin or Minnesota or whatever, if you use Portland cement. So I think, I'm no expert at it, but I think what they would recommend is you use it. You can get type N, which has a good degree of lime, and then maybe add a few more parts of lime. In the U.S., we get that crap, the hydrated lime, but it's going to be, your mix is going to be softer. There's going to be enough type N in there where it's going to harden up and pretty quickly and you can keep working. Just make sure your joints are soft. So it has to do with even letting some water in, some water out, breathing. You've heard too many people, like experts like Chad Viacord or Via whatever his name is, say if you use like Portland cement or just a type S, it's just too much cement. It'll be great for 6, 7, 8 years and then it'll all crack apart or whatever. I mean, if you live in Virginia or Georgia, it'll last a whole lot longer. This is more of an issue in the real cold states. No expert on it, just keep that in mind if you you can rebuild your own chimney, guys. This is really not a bit. You don't have to spend $8,000 with somebody. Okay, guys, the last section is on different types of wood. My experience or my opinion, can you burn pine or evergreen? They say, oh, you get creosote. I'll just tell you what I think. I wouldn't read this chart too closely. It's a BTU chart. At the bottom where my finger is, it's like says softwood's the medium, and then at the top where it says oak is the hard, but it's a BTU chart. I just saw some strange things, like it says there poplar, hardwood. I mean, there's no way poplar is a hardwood. So I don't know. Just don't spend too much time on what it, where it says spruce sparks heavily. I don't know. Forget the chart. In terms of pine, can it be or white pine, spruce? Can it be burned? Sure, if you season it properly and season it long enough and burn it hot enough. It has to be seasoned and split, and it has to stay, very well aerated for at least 1 year. It is actually better to do 1.5 to 2 years for some wood. 2 years to 1 year actually makes a difference in getting the moisture content down, but at least 1 year. And of course, if you split into small pieces, it'll dry out much more quickly than if you have these big, huge, thick pieces. But if it's white pine or evergreen, if it's a year or more, small pieces, and it's well ventilated where it's not just sitting in a pile getting soaking wet with, you have it, covered up where air can pass through it. People put the wood in these sheds. There's no air moving in the shed. That's not how you want to season wood. You put a roof or a ceiling on the top and nothing on the sides, so air can pass through the sides and the top is protected from rain. You can season it out in the rain, but you have to have it, you have to dry it out for three or 4 weeks before you burn it. You can just let it season in the rain, but again, at the very end before you burn it, you got to dry it out for about a month. Anyway, guys, if you burn it super hot, full air, you don't try it with pine or evergreens or softwoods. You don't go to bed at night and choke the air down like everybody chokes the air down because I got to have coals in the morning. I got to have coals in the morning. Just why do you have to have coals in the morning? If you burn hot with full air, you don't get creosote. I've never had creosote in the pipe ever in 20 some years because I just almost never choke down. Just start another fire in the morning. I need to have coals in the morning. Is that really just people choke everything down too quickly? If you're going to choke it down, let it burn hard for 30, 40 minutes. People let it rage up for 5 minutes and then they choke it down and go to bed. It's a creosote factory. So white pine, whatever. If it's small pieces, seasoned 1 or more years, at least 1 year, sorry, and burn it hot with full air. You're not going to have any issues, in my opinion. With creosote, you shouldn't, make a habit of just burning soft junk wood, but it's not a big deal mixing a little bit in, and it usually goes up very quickly, and it's nice to start fires with. Although that's not probably a great idea to just keep starting with softwood because your chimney's cold and you will get creosote. Anyway, so it's not a big deal if it's nice, dry, seasoned, and you burn it hot with full air and don't choke it down. White pine, no problem. But of course, my favorite is oak. Hickory is so hard that it's almost like if you don't have a super hot fire, it's hard to get it going. It's so hard. Oak to me, like a red oak, white oak, it's the best of all worlds. It's a nice hardwood, but it's not too hard to get started. You can put 3 big pieces in if you let it burn real well for 30, 40 minutes before you choke it down. And the poplar, it's just you put your pieces of poplar in, and 25 minutes later, it's all gone. It just burns down. But it burns, it's very easy to burn when it's dry, poplar and soft woods. So, okay, guys, hopefully that helps. Thanks for being here.